Well, good morning, Karen. It's so great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time and your input on this. Been a pleasure knowing you over the years and watching your career, and it's just been an amazing trajectory. And I know that your time has been filled with challenges and opportunities. From a distance, it can look like, wow, she just like one success after another. And I'm sure there are some hard fought battles along the way. And so this topic of diversity, inclusion, and real life leadership challenges and benefits, right? So we'd love to ground this conversation in your real experiences and just walk through some of those stages in your experience in your career and hear your story. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, John, so much for having me. And this is such a timely topic as people, take the opportunity to reflect back on what they've learned and as you said, some of the grounding experience in these very unusual times that we're in today. Um, so yes, starting even from early experience in my life, I have to say I was very fortunate growing up in Brooklyn, New York, and having it during my high school years, having a teacher who was a biology teacher, and you'll hear me give all kudos to teachers, someone who saw something in me. She knew that I loved math and science and investigated into an engineering program at University of Massachusetts that was part of, at that time, their minority engineering program. And I was fortunate enough to attend it during the summer of my junior year. I had such a great experience that it was one of the schools that I added to my wish list of colleges to apply to.
No?
And it was something, John, it would never have been on my radar as I was only thinking of New York City, New York State schools, Hunter College, NYU, Syracuse, which were a number of schools that my peers were applying to.
No.
And then this became part of my line of sight.
Right.
Ultimately, I applied to the school after I had such a great summer. I received grant money, I did work study, and got accepted into the School of Engineering, where I graduated with a Bachelor's of Science degree in industrial engineering. While at UMass, I did get involved in different organizations that were definitely support organizations to me, Society of Women Engineers and National Society of Black Engineers, SWE and NSBE. Ultimately, with NSBE, because it was not uh, a program or an organization at the time, I was involved in creating a charter, and I became the first NSBE president at UMass, which is like, again, amazing. And when we learned from other schools that had different chapters, we learned about hosting events. I led the team into hosting a career day in which the Navy participated. And ultimately, I was selected for a project engineer position with Naval Sea Systems Command. And so when I graduated, that's an exciting thing, to be graduating and having a job in hand. That was something that I did and I had an opportunity for. Um, so I would say, just as I hearken back to that time, when I think about some challenges there, it's okay to feel like something is new, feel like a fish out of water, I would say. But it's also okay to just learn from people, new environments, having a sense that you belong, having a sense that you are right for where you are in life. Um, and the benefits for me is just having someone who took an interest in me early on in my life. That is so huge. Um, my parents, like many others, did not know about the college application process.
Yeah. Yeah.
They, they'd come to this country in the 60s. And fortunately for me, I had someone who saw my potential, someone who turned out to be really my first coach and mentor.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, before I even, were able to put words to mentorship,
Mhm.
this biology teacher,
Mhm.
Mrs. Hampson, she really was that mentor.
Mhm.
And I learned from her. And, over the course of my career, certainly I have tried to do the same.
Mhm.
And one of the mantras that I use, I'll say each one reach one, each one teach one, give back by mentoring. And as I look back to my career, I've done it almost at every stage.
Mhm.
When we were at Naval Sea Systems Command, I was part of the Navy Kids program, and it was so great to see these kids dropped off by buses as NAVC was down at the Washington Navy Yard, and just kind of the look on the faces of the mentors and the mentees as we would go and pick them up and bring them into our offices and and have them for the time. So I got to get really close with some of the young people that I mentored that
Mhm.
way. And then even to the point of becoming a mentor with the First Lady Michelle Obama's mentorship program. And that was extremely special to be able to work with very, very smart young ladies in and around the local National Capital Region high school students and talk to, I mean, these were smart young ladies. They were going to be successful, I think, regardless. But being able to see women in leadership positions uh, in the Obama administration, and knowing that they could be there, knowing that they could rise to the same challenges. Um, this past week, I even participated in BEA, which is Black Engineer of the Year Award. They have something called the Sustaining Mentoring Program,
Yeah.
where military flag officers across all of the services and current and former SES civilians mentor to local high school students. Members of my team within LMI, we mentor to Ballou High School,
Mhm.
and we do that once a week. And again, we've been very flexible, working with the principal, doing it via Zoom, and talking to the students about this very thing that I mentioned at the very beginning: college application, making decisions on 2-year, 4-year, identifying pros and cons of either one, of offering to help with packaging up the application and looking at writing samples. I mean, these are things that if I didn't have that in my junior year, again, it put me on this career path and put me on this trajectory of a technical career, which at the time I really didn't know a lot about.
Yeah.
Um, I did not have an experience where I necessarily had engineers in my family. I did have military members in my family with cousins and uncles, but at the time it was so new and so different.
Yeah.
And so even when people feel that challenge of this is new, this is different, fish out of water,
Yeah.
it's okay. It's okay to know that you're stepping into new terrain, because again, that's life. That is going to happen, and it happens with all of us.
And you touched on so many points there. I can't even begin to unpack all those. There's so many points embedded in all your experiences and you're describing. Just to reflect back a couple of things that really strike me, I get goosebumps. First of all, for me as a white male in the majority in these fields, to realize that, hey, when someone doesn't look like the majority, they may be having these thoughts and experiences. Maybe, not to prescribe, but just to be open to, reaching out and initiating, hey, how are you feeling? Are you feeling welcome? We want to make sure you really feel at home. And I know, this is not necessarily the typical, but you're welcome, and really embracing that. And so noticing and taking the initiative. And that goes, of course, for in any direction. It's not just white men and others. It's, majority and minority in any given situation. And then two other things that you're mentioning throughout your description is the grounding questions of what can my organization do, right, to initiate these kinds of outreaches at any level. And again, there's so many important parts and points in the pipeline. I know that phrase from that you're describing, how early it can be so impactful early on in the pipeline. And you can say, well, we only have this many people to interview and we only have this many candidates. Well, that's because the pipeline hasn't been generated early on. And so getting involved in that, not just what my organization can do, but what can I do? What am I going to do? Am I mentoring one individual? Right?
Exactly.
If nothing else, right? Each one, reach one. I mean, it starts there. And then, yes, we can build programs and organizational efforts. But I love what you're describing. It's very challenging and inspiring at the same time.
It is when we look at our own ability to impact and we look at our own ability to cast a net and, as we say, teach people to fish, right? And they become fishermen. And again, and I am fortunate even today working at LMI and being able to incorporate and work on a formal mentorship program. As it is today, I still mentor to many who are coming up in the ranks in their mid-career and leadership careers. But to have a formal mentorship program in place, it's one that's needed. Our employees have been asking for it, and I'm glad to be part of the team that's actually going to work to formally deploy it. When I was with Navy, as I was alluding to before, I came in, worked for Naval Sea Systems Command, and started off at Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. Talk about fish out of water.
You think?
Coming straight out of Brooklyn.
Oh, wow.
Portsmouth. Yes.
Wow.
And working with people who had families who were, aunts and uncles and cousins, and who worked with their dads and watched them come through in the shipyard. And keep in mind, this is during the Reagan years, when we were a 600 ship Navy and just really building ship systems through Groton, Connecticut, and through Newport News, and building these platforms. And so I come in, with degree in hand, but know nothing about submarine life, world, anything like that. Wow. And so I was really just a sponge. I was really learning a lot, hard hat in hand, steel-toed shoes, and learning from military, learning from pipers, welders, machinists, and just the pride that was there in the work of the men and women who serve both on the military side and again on the civilian side. And so that was really, really huge for me. And I was grounded in such a solid foundation that I don't think I realized it when I was in the engineering internship program, and when I did eventually come to do a rotational assignment in Washington, D.C., and get more of the kind of, back office, contracting, program management, project management, learned about HR. It was later on in life when I did eventually migrate and then took a job here in Washington, that I learned the value of having been able to kick the tires,
Yeah.
know the product.
Yeah.
And so when you start off in a career, when you really know that product and you're able to talk about it, you really have, I would say, the customer experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when we would take, when a ship was taken apart in dry dock, essentially you're watching this $1 billion, weapon system come apart and then put back together. And for the men and women, in the Navy who are submariners and working side, hand in glove with civilians alike, you realize quickly the impact of the work you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so coming to DC and being a project engineer
Mm.
on a 688 class submarine, one of the things that you do throughout the course of whether it's an overhaul or a depot modernization, DMPs are take a shorter period of time, but you put together a book which is a composite of all of the work items that have done throughout everything.
Right.
And you can imagine all of the quality reviews that go
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
this. In fact, NASA learned from NAVC when it came to these quality reviews, quality assurance programs, when you say a ship is ready to
Right.
go to sea.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to be in a position which is uh, life impacting. We had learned lessons from the loss, regrettably, of the USS Thresher,
Right.
and put those programs in place. But to be in an office where you get to be the one carrying the book to the leadership team
Yeah.
with all of the technical sign offs and saying that this ship is ready to
Mm.
go to sea, it's really daunting.
Mm. Mm.
And again, to your point, to have that meeting with all of the leadership team who signed off and shown that we are prepared, and to be probably the only woman in the room,
Yeah.
and it wasn't probably, it was true, and maybe the only person of color, or maybe there's one other, and you're the one going through the presentation of why this ship is seaworthy,
That's awesome.
is it's awesome. It's amazing. um, it puts you into a position where you almost feel like, is there anything I cannot do? So, so the challenge is, putting all of that aside,
Mm.
is just really being prepared. I
Mm.
can't emphasize that enough with people who are, early career professionals, being prepared for, you know, any type of question that you may get,
Mm.
because and if you've done your homework, as most people have, you know what you're talking about. You don't necessarily need to second guess yourself. You are prepared. What I like to tell people, and especially women, sometimes when you are at that big conference table and you don't see another woman and you go around, you do the introductions. I said, it's actually a good thing because people will remember your name.
Now, I have to ask, did you experience that sense of having to be more prepared? You know what I mean? Like you have to be twice as ready. And did you experience this skepticism, or, you hear, as a white male, I hear that. And did you experience that?
I think that I did. I think that I knew, certainly any question could have come to me in terms of identifying, as I said, if a ship was ready to go to sea
Yeah.
trials.
Yeah.
But I know in my heart of hearts that I tried to exceed expectations. I wanted to, to not only be prepared, but also sort of wanted to shine in the information and shine in my knowledge that I had acquired over the course of time of being the project engineer on that DMP. So yes, and I have had some of these conversations too with other women, with people of color, that you have this sense that you need to be almost in an overcompensating sort of way, to root out what could be any type of bias, because again it goes to, you have a right to be there, you have a right to be seated at the table. When you were hired, people saw the potential in you, and through that potential, um, whether it's a degreed program, you finish something.
Yeah.
So you've shown that you have the, what I like to call, stick to itness to accomplish, complete something, complete a task, and learn. And so you're applying all of those critical thinking skills and other skills that you've developed, and you're really sort of sharpening those tools in your toolkit.
Awesome. Yeah. What an incredible array of experiences. And I know, from there, your resume is just an amazing series and progression of experiences from there into the White House and and I mean, I can't imagine that's a story unto itself. And then now to LMI, and how has that transition been from so many years of federal experience and into this current role? And how has that transition been? And what challenges have you faced? And what are you trying to establish there?
Well, like you said, John, yeah, it was an experience of a lifetime to come in 2009 on the heels of tremendous change and the Obama administration kicking off. And stepping into the technology side of things, I was definitely a results-driven leader. I knew that I wanted to come in and make a difference and have an impact. And at the time at White House, we had launched whitehouse.gov and We the People. And those were platforms that put a heavy, heavy focus on participatory government and ways to enable and engage citizens. And we really had not seen that before,
Yeah.
in the course of time. And so uh, now, having looked back at all of that, and stepping into, as I return to the private sector, I think I'm positioned to continue to support federal government leaders, specifically CIOs, in some of these challenging areas, whether it's driving innovation, using data analytics to learn trends, deliver services to citizens. What we're seeing now too is people who have had that federal experience and at the, as you said, highest levels of government, really have a good understanding of the challenges that this new team is coming in, right? And that they face with delivering these key services. And so as we look to today, even as the Biden-Harris administration starts, the heavy focus, not the least of which is on COVID-19 and certainly in our healthcare and health systems. But also that in itself, the COVID-19 and global pandemic has put a bright mark on system inequities that we've seen in this country over many, many years. And it's made the challenges of, I think, both gender and racial diversity in the workplace even more acute. And so while that is an issue, we're also seeing effects across our government of ways that we can incorporate diversity, inclusion, equity, and accessibility programs, um, ways in which we can see some changes, particularly with women in senior management position, and across the representation that we need to see there, and making it so that it's not uneven, and that we have that clear representation. So what's really good is at LMI, we have put a framework in place, and it wasn't something that was new. It was actually something that existed. And I'm proud to be part of a company where, we have a CEO who's come in, and Doug Wagner has made a commitment in this area. And and that we can actually help even with our clients understand what that means to put something like that in place.
Yeah.
We've, taken the opportunity to have some of these more intimate conversations, because to your point, as leaders, you really don't know on any given day what your employees are going through.
Yeah.
And now that we've been on all these Zoom calls, it's very interesting, because what I've seen, this is nothing that I would have imagined, but I'm getting into the homes of
Yeah.
my team
That's
members,
right. Yeah, that's right. Like never before.
learning even more about them,
Yeah.
but also being able to engage in some of these, I think, hard and challenging conversations that we we would personalize and not necessarily bring into our professional lives.
Yeah.
And that's also very, very different. It's a change that I don't think we will ever go
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
to the way things were before.
For
And
sure.
so learning from that, and incorporating, as I said, these practices into our workplace, where we can actually provide support to some of our customers and clients who are going through some of the same challenges, and need similar support mechanisms, need that change management piece that they can incorporate in their workforce. So
Awesome.
I see some of that happening, and just happy to be a part of the change.
Awesome. What would you articulate as the call to action for public servants, and those like yourself who support public servants like myself? How would you define, articulate the call to action right now?
Well, I would say, you know, as we see some of the major challenges in our federal government, be it national security, be it, health systems, IT, health security, be it climate change, and the risks, as the senior teams are coming in, um, these new, chief of staffs and new leaders that are coming in. One of the things is that they will need to kind of work with their principals to get down these priorities. And, while there's no necessarily precise formula, they're going to need to lay out sort of what is manageable that
Yeah.
they can consistently focus on, that they can communicate around these themes, that they can align with a lot of the federal government employees who are smart,
Yeah.
who are technical, who are researchers, who are data scientists, and learn from them, take in what they have, because they've been the ones on the job.
Yeah.
They have been doing the job, but actually look for those signals in place where, these are the people who've dedicated their life to public service, as many of us have. and be very crisp and clear on these priorities, but take into consideration and learn from some of the signals of members of the team who've been in place and who know best how to navigate in some of the spaces. We're seeing a lot of, interagency activities, and that's not always easy.
Yeah.
It definitely isn't. I mean, when I was at White House, we wanted to show that we could be agile and pliable, and we could roll out processes and technology. But you've got to be able to know who to go to
Yeah.
for the information and really to get things done.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So last question. That's great. Last question is pull out your crystal ball and look into the future. What do you see? What's your, whether it's a crazy prediction or, something a little out of the box, like just beyond what may be obvious, what is your version? What's the Karen Britton prediction that we can come back and see, a year from now or 3 years from now and see if it actually came true? What do you see in the future?
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's an interesting one because we, disruption is the new normal.
Yeah.
It really, really is. Just as much as we cannot imagine being in a global pandemic without technology. We can't imagine what we've gone through in 2020 happening in 2000.
Yeah. I mean, what would we be doing?
What,
How we would not be able
how,
to.
how would we do this? And so, I think it really is, disruption is the new normal, and it while it creates a level of disruption that some say could be unthinkable just over a decade or two ago. It introduces opportunities to really achieve enormous efficiencies and cost gains, and we're really just, I think, at the beginning of understanding some of these more sophisticated devices. What we're learning from things like big data, machine learning algorithms, will just continue to help us in not only our learning and our training and the way we work, um, but it's going to continue to grow. Just think about natural language processing, where, as an example, State Department would probably have to hire that unicorn who speaks Farsi and knows technology and knows security. Now you just incorporate it into a natural language processor, and you don't necessarily need to have that. But the big thing is also going to be this balancing act of automation with being able to train the workforce of the future and what skill sets people need in some of these technology roles, because you still need that human aspect. So it's going to be this juggling and this battling of that, and also as we learn, not putting in, as we've talked about, you know biases in place of system, in place of people, as we get these new systems and technology. So it's going to be the policies catching up with technology
Yeah.
as we see today.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's stripped way out ahead and outstripped the policy and their capacity to understand how to manage this across the globe. It's well beyond national, obviously. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, this isn't just us. It's not just the US, it's the entire world. And how do we incorporate all this into our practices and our culture? Yeah,
Right.
well, it's going to be a fascinating future.
It will be. It will
Thank
be.
you for your input and and thank you for your service, and appreciate the thoughts and the challenges, and the mentoring that you're doing currently, and the inspiration. It's awesome. It's such a pleasure to know you, and to just stay connected and to progress. And please, let us know what we can do to support and encourage you and others that you're working with, and we'd be thrilled to do whatever we can.
Thank you
Great.
so much for having me, John. I
Really
appreciate it.
pleasure, Karen. All right. I'll circle back and we'll tag up. It's just been great to be with you. Thanks.
Thanks.
All
Take
right.
care now.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.